In today's episode, we will get to know and interview Herbert Ong. For those of you who haven't followed him yet, go follow Herbert on his YouTube channel, Brighter with Herbert, and also follow him on X.com under the handle of @HerbertOng. Many of you in the Tesla community are familiar with Herbert and the many works that he has put out there with the content creation. He is host of the Cyber Bulls, and he regularly has very insightful and in-depth conversations with AI experts and other people regarding around Tesla from a stock perspective and a company perspective. In today's episode, yes, I want to talk about Tesla and dive deeper into his thoughts with regards to Tesla as a company and as a stock, but I also wanted to get to know the man behind all this amazing content creation and understand who Herbert is, how he got to where he is today, and why he believes so strongly in an all-in investment in Tesla, the way he has done before with other companies. So please join us. Stick to the end because this is a mega packed interview. We have lots of great things that we discuss, and hopefully you learn something about Herbert and what has worked for him, and maybe you can apply it to you in your life. Do me a favor again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, help us get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you and enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. In today's episode, we will be interviewing Herbert Ong. Many of you might know him as Tesla Herbert. Herbert, welcome, and appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm looking forward to this. You're somebody I've been wanting to have spend more time with, and I privilege have you on my channel as well. So thank you for letting me come join you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So before we get into it, as everybody's probably expecting, we are going to talk Tesla because, well, how can we not? It's the elephant in the room. But I guess over the last, I don't know how long, but definitely over the last year, if you at all follow Tesla, you have seen, heard something with Herbert. He has, as far as I'm concerned, not only exploded on the scene as far as volume of content, but quality of content. I mean, it is absolutely impressive at the rate that this man is working. And so I wanted to understand a little bit more about who he is, where he came from, how he came up, how he got started in all of this. And then we can dive into more of the traditional Tesla topics that many of you are probably interested in. So, Herbert, again, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Before we start, can you just tell us a little bit of background of who you are, maybe where you're from, just your background, your general story, and then I'll probably go down some rabbit holes and we'll just see where things go.
Okay, it sounds like fun. So basically, I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. So I'm Canadian. I'm currently living in Seattle now. My background is in tech. I'm a product manager, so I like to build businesses. I like to build products. It's just something that really excites me, right? Finding early. I'm an early adopter, finding technology. So I was a big Apple fan, as many of us are, very much enthralled with kind of like how the Silicon Valley was started and how it was created. So I wanted to follow along that path. I was an early investor in Apple, and then I got into Tesla at 2012 myself. And just something that I like to look at things that are going to change the world and where it goes. As a background, I'm a product manager, so I've started three startup companies also myself, and I'm in healthcare. So it's healthcare analytics is where I've made my mark, and then I've done apps now as well. And that's what I'm currently doing. So I'm running a company called Juva Health. It's a kind of a biofeedback app for migraine. And then basically what happened was last year, I was just like everyone else watching and participating and kind of like listening and learning more about Tesla through all these creators, these wonderful creators. And then I started to do X Spaces or Twitter Spaces at the time, got to know folks like you and everyone else. And then I just wanted to get more into it. So basically, I'm now full time doing YouTube. And it's just like, at one point when you're invested in the company and you go, what do I want to do? Right? What do I love to do? And I can't stop talking Tesla. I need to dive deep into bots and energy and, you know, just all the things that Tesla's doing. So I couldn't help myself, and then I started doing this now full time. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I kind of have a similar story when it comes to that. At first I was thinking, man, there's a lot of Tesla content out there. And then I found myself going through the content that was out there at the time, which seemed like so much. And then all of a sudden it became, I want more. I wish there was more, right? Like there's not enough out there for me to consume that I want to hear different perspectives. And then that's essentially what led me to saying, you know what, if I'm feeling this way, if there's even
Yeah.
one other person feeling this way, then I might as well jump into it. And I also had other reasons why I want to do this. I like the idea. Dave Lee always talks about leaving kind of a history of what's
Yes.
happened, his investments. He saw that for his kids. And I always thought there was something beautiful about that. And so I thought, you know what, this would be a really cool story to look back on. When my kids just, life's just so different for them. They can see what dad do, what mistakes did he make, and just, the whole course of everything. Like we can actually track things. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. What got me excited about Tesla was I do think that we are witnessing history in the making. And I think we're very fortunate that Elon Musk, a person like him, is actually living in our
Yeah.
timeline. And literally, if you look at my YouTube channel, I say that I want to document this as we're happening, very similar to you. So I started to write down all the milestones that Tesla as a product manager, right? It's
Yeah.
part of my kind of personality and career is to kind of map out where the product's going to go, where the business is going to go, and that's why I kind of dabbed myself that I kind of like name myself as the milestones guy because I started creating these milestone lists and then wanted to just interview. So my channel is primarily interviewing, and it's something I enjoy doing. Coming on channels like you, talking to people like you, learning about them, and everybody in this community is so smart. It's just it's a joy and it's like an honor for us to have this ability to find the person who's the best in batteries, that find the person who understands factories, the person who understands bots, and I get to interview them and learn. Right?
Yeah, yeah. It's the interviewing thing's interesting. I mean, I love watching, all the interviews everybody does, but I found myself wanting to know more about the people rather than just their thoughts on Tesla. So like if anybody ever goes back and watches, the interviews with Farzad, I think Farzad and I have done like two or three
Yeah.
of them. Like back when nobody like not people knew Farzad, but he had like maybe like 9,000 subscribers. It's
Yeah.
just getting to know the guy, and the same with Alexandra.
Yeah.
This is right when Alexandra was like blowing up, and we
Mhm.
just spent all this time talking and drinking wine, just having a conversation. But the people are so interesting, and that's really why I want to have you on, is just to
Thank
get
you.
to
Yeah.
know the guy behind the amazing brand that you're building.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
so before again we go into tests and everything. So you were born in Canada. How'd you end up, I guess, in California now, right? Is it the
No,
Silicon
it's actually
Valley?
Seattle.
Oh, you're in
It's Seattle,
Seattle.
yeah,
Okay, excuse me. Well,
yeah,
same thing. Is it the Silicon Valley type bug
yeah.
that brought you over there?
It's exactly right. So first of all, I wasn't born in Canada. I'm Chinese from the Philippines, but I moved to Canada when I was 5 years old. So
Oh, do you speak Tagalog?
I do, I do.
Oh,
I can
nice.
understand it. Yeah.
All right.
And then, so Canadian, and then around the 1999, the dot-com boom was happening. My wife said, we've got to move to the US. We've got to be part of this, tech thing. And she knows that I'm just like nonstop tech, Silicon Valley kind of thing. So I actually moved to San Diego and lived there for 4 years at a startup. This startup raised $225 million from WIT,
Wow.
Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, all the big name venture capitalist firms. But we missed the whole, I don't know if you're old enough to know what happened, but there was a dot-com boom and then the dot-com crash. We were about to go IPO in a month and then it happened. So we missed out on that. But, I loved it. Love California. Love the whole vibe of creating new businesses. So moved back to Vancouver and then eventually came back to Seattle to start another kind of era there. So yeah, yeah,
So, have you always been in the healthcare space intersection with tech?
yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So uh, one of my kind of claim to fames is that I actually worked at all the major hospitals in Vancouver, Canada, like the big ones. And then I found myself when I graduated. My father made me go into pharmacy of all things, because they own pharmacies. And so I said, okay, I'll just do this for a few years and then get out, which is what I did. I got an MBA, then I worked at IBM, and then that's how we got into
Ooh.
tech. But when I was doing that, I was a director of a hospital pharmacy, and I actually implemented the electric medical records across the whole hospital, not just the
So
pharmacy, but the entire hospital.
so like
Yeah.
what we know today as EMRs.
EMRs, but everything. So there's a lab, there's a pharmacy, there's an admission,
Yeah.
discharge, radiology. Everybody would have software, and but they had to be integrated, right? And so I had that kind of, I implemented it. I was part of I was a leader of a team that actually did that. That was really early days, and so I just remember thinking at that time that, boy, I want to be the person that's building the software, that's helping design the software. And that's what got me into how do I do that? How do I get into that? I did an MBA and then got a job at IBM. And then we went and bought every single uh, if you wanted to create a province-wide or statewide or countrywide electronic medical record, you had to get into the doctor's offices. And so we bought all the billing software until we had
Uh,
80% of all doctors in British Columbia had to use our software. And then once you do that, you can then make them use an electronic medical record. That business still exists today. So a very large tech telecom company bought that out and it's still running it today. So yeah, pretty big.
wow. So you go from were you always a PM?
Yeah, product management. It's kind of like
Okay.
my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you at any point want to get, more into like development side, or were you just more of wanting to be like the quarterback of everything?
I'm not smart enough. So I didn't do any developing. I can't do developers, but of course I work with many developers. So I feel like I kind of understand the full stack. I know who to, to talk to. So I've almost just really the business guy and the product guy. And then I eventually started 3 startups. And, at that point it's like, yeah, I'm not the developer. I'm more of I think I'm hoping to be Steve Jobs.
Yeah. So so when I hear that, to me that sounds like you're, clearly a startup guy.
Yeah.
How does one go from, I have lots of friends actually where I live here, who have moved here from California as well. I have one individual in my mind particularly, but he's also a big Tesla guy, but
Yeah.
he's older than me. He's, maybe like 20, 30 years older than me, but he's a startup guy,
Yeah.
and he really invests in startups. And when he says startups, he doesn't mean like his or definition of startups. Like there's not even a round of funding yet, kind of startups.
Yeah.
So like
Yep.
real startup, like in that sense. So, but his mentality, it seems to be more around investing from that persona. So how or what made you go from a startup investment mentality to publicly traded companies? Like that seems like two different personality types.
Is it? I mean,
I mean, people think we're risky going all in Tesla, right? And I think there's high risk in startups, right? So like, do you think, there's something there that, influenced your ideas of how you invest now publicly?
huh? That's an interesting question. I mean, uh, that's a good question. So I think that because as you have a personality of willing to do startups from scratch and just starting a business, I'm already kind of risk, right? I'm open to risk and taking risk. And then but when I invested, you know how it is, right? So I'm older than you are quite a bit, and so depending on your age, do you invest differently, right? So at the
Mhm.
very beginning, you should be risky. You should be
Yeah,
betting
supposedly
on
at
very
least is what
risky
everyone
things,
says.
right? Of course, you put your money to make sure you're safe. You make sure you have a home. You have savings, all that. And then if you have investment money, you should be more open a certain part of it to be on more risky investments, right? So I did that. I did a bunch of like investments in biotech and so forth. All of them failed. None of them took off. I didn't do well. But the one thing that I'm so excited about was always Apple. And Apple was just like my interest and my passion for Tesla. It was very much an Apple in the early days when the stock was $17. I was already so enthralled with the whole story about, just how they started from the very beginning. And then that just and then when you stop and think about it, Apple's actually not a risky investment at all. If anything, at that point, I saw it as the safest investment, and it turned out to be right. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do people
What?
think that Tesla is as a risky investment? Like,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
high beta, so there's a lot of volatility. but it's not likely going to go out of business like other companies, let's say Rivian or something like that, that has a high chance of going out of business.
Well, just let's go back to Apple real quick. So when when would you say you started? I mean, I think I've heard some of the story, so I'm not
Yeah.
trying to just get you to say the same thing again. But what piqued your interest at Apple to the point where you decided I want to start investing, and then to really start diving into the story of Apple?
Like I said, so I was very interested in the whole story of the microcomputer, the PC, and heading out there. And I started investing just because it's the Silicon Valley lure, and it's Steve Jobs, and the whole focus on the beauty of the product and so forth, and knowing that microcomputers and PCs are going to be everywhere, right? So the Apple computer was going to be everywhere. And then when they launched the iPod, just like everyone else, that's when you realize that this company is not just a computer company. They are more than that. They're an innovation company. And to realize that the iPod and then the iTunes software, how they all connect together, you realize that this is not going to be just one industry. They're going to continue to add different industries as they move along, and that's exactly where we're at with Tesla, by the way.
Yeah,
And so the investment is less about this one product; it's more about this company and the culture of that company and where they're going to head towards. And then once you realize that they're very special, as a special company, as we all know, so I started to become more and more all in. I started to move my money from other investments that many of them didn't do well, and I started to consolidate. And so I pretty well went all in on Apple very early on. I mean, so now it's like and then and from 2012 to 2018, I started to do Apple plus Tesla, and by 2018, I decided. I'm sorry, 2020. I finally started moving everything now away. I just took everything off of Apple and now all on Tesla at this point,
gotcha.
because I see the exact same thing with like at this point, my position is Apple's going to do a fantastic job. They're going to double. They may even triple. They're going to come out with their AR glasses, which they started to come out with. That will be very, very successful. This company will succeed, but they'll double, triple. But I see Tesla being able to do 10x, and yet the downside is less. So it's like for me, it's like both the safest company and the potential for the highest growth. And so like anyway, no, not investment advice because I'm obviously been wrong many times. I've had many wrong calls in the past, but this time I feel comfortable with that evaluation.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. So I'll really make you feel the disparity in our age here.
Yeah.
I first I first had my, I guess, real experience with an Apple product when I was, I guess, in second grade. It's
Yeah.
whenever they came out with like the colorful computers, right? I had a computer class. Well, maybe that was like fourth grade. I don't know, sometime around then. Then when I was in eighth grade, or seventh grade, I learned about what MP3 players were.
Yeah.
And everybody had CD players, and every time they would skip and you had to buy the CDs. I'm like, this is
Mhm.
crazy. And then I discovered what an MP3 player was, and it blew my mind. I'm like, what? And I would tell people, like, look, I can shake it all the time. It won't skip. Nothing will skip. And the
Yeah.
songs are free. Like I can get them for free. And then maybe like 6 months later, I discovered, or Apple like came out with an iPod, and it was gorgeous. I was like, this
Yeah.
thing's amazing. The tactile, like the track wheel, the sound. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And and then when I got into ninth grade, my stepfather, he for my birthday, he he was thinking about getting me something, but he wasn't sure. And then he said to me, like, look, I have this idea for you as a gift, but I don't know if you'd want it. And I was like, well, what is it? And at the time, I'd been saving up money to buy a car because when you turn
Yeah.
16, you get your license.
Yeah.
And I had about 3 grand saved up. And he said to me, he's like, well, I don't know if you'd be into this, but I was thinking about helping you open a brokerage account and so
Hmm.
you can buy stocks.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, yeah, sold. Let's do that. So we took all my 3 grand, we opened up a Fidelity account, and he showed me how to Fidelity works and told me, go do research, whatever. And at the time, I there was this rumors about this Microsoft coffee table that was going to come
Yep.
out.
I
It was
remember
called the
that. Yes.
Surface. Yeah. And like
Surface.
you could split up bills on it and everything. Like, this is amazing. And then when I was looking up this technology of touchscreens and everything, it led me
Yes.
down the path to these rumors about Apple and coming out with the phone. And
Yeah.
remember, Apple had an initial phone with AT&T that wasn't the iPhone. It was
Right.
like
Yeah.
this white phone with buttons. But then there was this article about this iPhone with a touchscreen, and all of a sudden, and that was rumored to come out in like July or something like that. And I remember I told my stepdad, because he was my custodian. I was like, "Hey, I want to put all my money into Apple," and so that's what I
Nice.
did. And that was my
Yeah.
first stock I ever had. And so it's funny, but that was kind of my same thing. I was like, well, I love this company already. I loved the iPod. They do beautiful products. I love everything about them. Yeah, let's just do all this, especially if this thing comes out. And sure enough, there's an iPhone release and everything. And the stock didn't do much for a little while,
Mm.
but that was my first investment. So I have a very soft spot for Apple, and obviously I love all their products. So it's funny how people can have like whole different life experiences, different genres and generations, but still have their own perspectives on a company. And it's
This is the thing, right? So you saw the potential, and looking back, people go, "Yeah, that's pretty obvious." Everybody knew that. No, they did not. In 2007 and 8, when the Apple iPhone came out, there was so much negative. You know, everybody just thought it was going to fail. It was too expensive. There's nothing. People really wanted the keyboard. Everybody said, "There's no way people are going to switch from a RIM BlackBerry to
yeah,
an
the
iPhone."
Pearl. I had that. Yeah.
The Pearl, and just tremendous negative feedback, and that's exactly what we're hearing today with Tesla. Even with a tremendously successful product, there's still so much people thinking there's going to be competition coming and all that. And what I tell people today about Tesla, the one thing, this was 2 years ago, my friend would say, "Well, the competition is coming." And then when I said to them, "Well, actually, it doesn't matter if the competition comes. The market is so big. Think Apple, Samsung, the competition came. Android ended up capturing 85% of the market, and Apple only has 15. But Apple's today the largest company in the world because of their margins and because of their brand, and even with just 15% of the market." And I said, that's exactly what can happen with electric vehicles. It doesn't matter if the competition comes. If all Tesla did was 15% of the market, they would still become the largest company in the world. So, and then at this point, we might actually be more than 15% at this point. But yeah,
Yeah. So, okay. So when did you realize that going all in on a company wasn't, I mean, I'm all in with Tesla. You're all in. If you told that to just somebody who doesn't know us, follow us, they would
dumb.
be like, "You're stupid. Like
Yeah,
this is stupid. You need to diversify." Right? That's the mantra everybody says. So
yeah,
when did you realize like
yeah.
this is actually a better strategy
So
for
what
you, at
happened, I
least?
guess, was very, very gradual over 10 to 15 years, right? So initially, like I said, even like when I was just young and I was start to invest, I would definitely go and I was trying to pick these penny stocks. Even I played penny stocks, I played a biotech, I have investments in Amazon. I've got investments. I did not do Google because I thought that they were going to get sued. So that was a mistake on my part. Um, but so yeah, you'd have a basket of stocks, and then with Apple, they started to give dividends, and then that was like, okay, right, that's going to be a source, and then you just go, which of these have the regular growth that actually are less risky,
Yeah.
and you just realizing, why am I investing in these other companies that are just, many of them like Costco and Johnson and Johnson, they grew, but they're just small growth. And I was in the growth mode. So again, depending on your stage of your life and your investment, I wanted to make my money grow. And I realized that Apple's the way to go. And so then, just slowly you just go, I'm going to sell this one. I'm going to put it to Apple. I'm going to sell this one, put it to Apple. And then eventually it's like, oh man, I'm overly weighted in one company, but I feel comfortable. I go, but I feel like if anything, this is very safe for next year and the year after. Because Apple, if you look at the history of what happened, it's always the last to fall when there's a massive recession, a
Yeah.
major hit. It's actually last to fall, and it's the first to rise because it's so strong balance sheet wise, competition wise. And you have to be careful. Of course, could somebody come up with a product that's going to wipe out Apple? For sure. I mean, there's these phones, right? That maybe they'll lose their dominance. But again, you're betting on the innovation of this company and their focus on quality and brand. and all that. And so it's like at the end of the day, I don't know, it just feels safe. So that's,
Yeah.
you definitely have to be aware that somebody could wipe them out. In Tesla, at this point, even if somebody comes out and just completely obliterates them in electric vehicles, it's not like we're going to lose 100% of our money. We'll probably lose 50%, maybe 60%. But then it becomes an energy company, it becomes a bot company, right? It becomes like autonomous software company. It doesn't have like it has this fail-safe kind of models, and that's what you're investing in. It's this kind of innovation capability. When Steve Jobs left, I still stayed in Apple for many years, but then you started to see that they may not be producing new products. For years, my wife would say, this company's not investing in innovating anymore. I go, no, no, I still believe that they're going to be strong. And year by year, I was correct. But now I'm at the point where maybe they are not going to.
Yeah.
They'll still do the, like I said, the AR glasses, and that will still succeed. But I see a Tesla versus an Apple, and I just think I might be completely wrong, by the way, on that. Right? Apple will be a
Yeah.
very successful company.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that. I see Apple as a company that could be, I don't want to say easily, but it could definitely be disrupted. Absolutely. It could be. But when I compare it to Tesla, I don't see a potential for Tesla to be disrupted, right? It almost seems impossible for them to be disrupted, at least not without you seeing it 2 years in advance, right? Like, it's just so complex doing what Tesla's doing, from the manufacturing to the sourcing of batteries to just the raw materials for everything. That even when it comes to like FSD, like you're not going to be able to just do this overnight or in stealth mode. Whereas a competition against Apple, you could do that in stealth mode, right? You could do that in stealth mode, and then one
Right.
day, say, "Hey, here we are." With Tesla, you're not going to not see it coming, which to me just gives me so much confidence in Tesla. And even with all the recent, news that we're seeing, and we'll touch on that in a little bit, it seems like everyone was saying that Tesla has like a 10-year, a 5-year lead on everybody. Oh my goodness, everybody is hitting pause button and delaying, and it's like, all right, well, Tesla's not. They're not doing that. So what happens
Yeah.
then? Like it
The
just
the biggest risk for Tesla is autonomy. So if another company, let's say a Chinese car company, comes out with an autonomous capability that Tesla's does not work out in time, then that's where you hear Elon saying that the car business is worth zero. Because if you have an autonomous car and your beautiful, wonderful, wonderful Tesla does not, it doesn't matter. People will buy the autonomy software. So that's why we have to keep a very close eye on what's happening with autonomy. Do we think that Tesla's still on the right path? Are they ahead of others? I do. I don't think that there's going to be one winner, so I'm comfortable with that. But I do think at this point that I am believing and understanding from everybody I've researched and talked to and all the experts that Tesla's belief that you need a supercomputer, that you need billions of miles, is still true. Now I have kind of like started researching these, Google Deep Minds and these chat that can just ingest video, and from that teach. And then so now you have to wonder, okay, is that possible that they could actually create a competing autonomous software or even be better than Tesla's? And I think the answer is still no, but you have to keep a close eye on that because that could be one thing. And that's where you just have to say to yourself, okay, let's say that has happened. Okay, let's say that there's autonomy and Tesla's not able to do this, then that car company just obliterates Tesla's at this point. Okay, let's say that that worst case scenario happens, then that's where I say, well, Tesla's still going to be an energy company, and an energy company will be as big as the car company, and we're already showing signs now of the growth and the profit, the margins, and all that with energy. And then there's the potential for the bot. Then there's potential for the other software, the Dojo software that they're Dojo as a service. So it's almost like okay,
you
it's not existential for
I
the company. So I feel comfortable.
yeah, we'll get to FST for sure in a second here because it's like my favorite topic.
I
Um,
yeah.
but taking a step back, you just made me realize something. So I've never said this, at least not publicly like this, but I've always felt that we all know that there's like a financial literacy deficit in our country, maybe the world in general.
Yeah.
But I've also always felt that there's a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm sure everybody's read it.
Mhm.
Robert
Yep.
Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
We actually went to the same place for college.
Mhm.
But there's a line in there that I forget if he says it or his rich dad said it, but it was the rich stay rich because the rich teach their kids how to be rich, and the poor stay poor because they teach their kids how to be poor, right? And sorry if that's callous, but it's true. Like if you think about it, and what we always learned growing up and everything is diversify, diversify. And to me, that's the poor teaching the poor how to deal with money. And again, not financial advice, but something you just said there that made me realize why it's such a if you can invest in just a handful of like one or two, like I have two companies I'm invested in. One's because of RSUs, so I have to be invested in that. But then it's Tesla. The advantage I have with that is that not one, I can do real deep research into that company. Whereas if you're invested in many, you can't. You just can't. It's not you can go an inch deep, a mile wide, but you can't go a mile deep. But the other thing that you just made me realize is that when you go all in one or maybe two companies, you can also research the competition
Yeah.
and
Yep.
truly
I like it.
understand what they're doing. When
Yep.
you're in all these companies, you have no way to research the competition, which makes
Get
it
all done.
even more risky,
It is.
right? It's
Yeah.
even
So I
riskier.
was going to say that when I used to pick stocks, and then you would have 10 or 15. Well, at 10 or 15, you basically watch what happens to your stocks over the years, and it's basically it's an ETF. And it's basically copying the S&P, which is fine. It's safer way, and I completely believe, again, depending on your
Risk
situation
tolerance,
financially,
age,
your
everything.
intelligence,
Yeah.
time. I don't have the time to be a trader, so you know that in cyber bulls, I have friends who are traders. I don't have the time, so I'm not going to be a good trader. Um, but so that's why it's okay to be in these ETFs or the basket of stocks. But I just found personally for me that when you have 10 or 15, you're basically just, some will be winners, some will be losers. And then all of a sudden you're just basically growing 10 or 15% growth, which is great. But it's like, I want it to grow bigger. And that's when you start
Yeah.
to pare down a little bit. And then you're picking the ones you want, and yet hopefully again you got to be careful. And again, it's just poor. When I say all in and other people say all in, what does that exactly mean? I think that just people aware that means that you still have cash, you still invested in real estate, you still have, let's say, some mutual funds or that, but it's just that of the money that you have available that you want to invest in stocks, of that kind of stocks, you've basically said I'm going to go to one. So it's just be
Yeah.
very careful. It's not like we're like totally dumb and we're going to put it all of our money in one thing, and if that crashes, we're dead. That you shouldn't do that, and no one should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No,
then
well
I
said.
actually taught my kids the same thing you just said, right? So when they were young, at 10 or 12 years old, opened them a trading account and bought Tesla, and then they watched it grow, and so then now they've learned that in 10 years, look what can happen to this as an investment. Don't just put your money in savings. Some should be there, but some, if you want to invest, you should invest, and that's how they learned, right? Because they watched it grow.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, that's the reason this channel is actually called investing against the grain. Is the
Yeah.
whole point is to kind of go against this, you know, this view, this dogmatic approach to investing. But no, that's well said. I never give financial advice to people, but I have people that I work with, friends, stuff that are younger than me, and they always want to ask like, "Oh, what should I invest in?" And my first question always, "Them, well, can I see your budget?
Yeah.
Where's your budget sheet? Let me see your budget." All right, well, that's the first thing you invest in. Figure out where your money's going in and out, and then I agree with you. I always tell people, in my opinion, you want to own your real estate, right? Because that's going to be, I mean,
Good
historically,
base.
especially in this
Mhm,
country, that's where most wealth is built for
mhm,
the majority of people is in their real estate. So, and then obviously you want to make sure that, you have enough to survive, unemployment or anything that could happen. And then from there, to your point, that's where I believe, and I also believe in maxing out your 401k up to a company's match.
mhm.
I personally
Exactly.
don't believe doing more than that. I know the tax advantages, but to me, max the match that a company will give you. But from there, I like to, max out a Roth, and then again, but yeah, so similar philosophy, but good good point there to distinguish that. Yeah, we're not living in a, you know, studio, $300 a month, just throwing every single thing into it. No, that would be silly. That's not a good quality of life either. Although I think that's what what's his name? Jason. Isn't that essentially
Yeah.
what he did? Lived out of his van working at Google.
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed Jason and obviously others, but again, he's different, right? He's a
Mhm.
young single person, and he made a huge jump because of investment in Tesla, and so he can go do all this stuff, right? Sell his house and take advantage of that. I've got a family, that's different at that point, right? So I'm older than he is, all of that. So you just, every person is different scenario, and he happens to be, he's not the way somebody told me was that he's actually not risking anything by selling his house and putting that into the stock because he's single and he can live on his own. And that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even then, I mean, at this point, with what he did there, his net worth is
Yeah.
Tesla would have to go bankrupt. I mean,
Right.
he's gonna be fine.
He'll be
So,
fine. Yeah.
all right. So let's deviate a little bit and let's talk about FSD autonomy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you have FSD. Is that right?
I do.
W- Uh, hardware three,
I had
hardware
to be,
four.
I just as you can tell, I'm an early adopter. And so I did everything I can to be one of the very first people to get FSD beta in my car. I was not like an Omar that
Mhm.
was able to get it, months ahead. But when it was October of, I can't remember what year now, 2021 or whatever it was, that they opened it up to people. You had to, you had to drive 100 miles. You had to have a perfect safety score, so we're all like driving carefully with our, not braking, not making turns. And I really took that seriously and I went as far as I can. So I even drove from Seattle to Vancouver and drive there just to drive back, just to get the miles in place on a highway to try to get this thing. What actually happened to me was I went there and I went to the near the border and I turned around and all of a sudden everything was wiped out on my screen. And I was so freaking out because what happened was because I was so close to the border, it
Oh,
detected that I was in Canada. And so the beta system just said, and it wiped out everything I had gained. And so I was freaking out. And then, but luckily, 2 days later, I got reset. And 2 days later, I was able to get it all again. And then I got it. I got it. So I was one of the, I think that I was one of the first 3,000 people, and people were, my friends were shocked at me going, how dare you try to be a beta tester? We get that you're a beta tester for everything, but this is not an app. This is a car that can kill you. But I just felt like this is a moment in history. I want to be one of the early people that's going to be driving an autonomous car that was there at the beginning. And that's the kind, that's what gives me my excitement in life. So that's what I did.
yeah. So right now, what version are you on?
11, so I don't know why I'm not on 11.4. I think I'm 11.4, but I wish I was I don't know, whatever, 11.47, whatever. I'm just 11.43 or 11.44, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought 11.44 was a pretty solid build,
Mhm.
at least around where I'm at. But 11.4.7.2 is what I have now. Um, that one's also pretty solid. It's got its quirks, but I have days where I don't have any interventions or any. I mean, people think I lie about this,
Yeah.
which I think is comical. It's like I have no reason to just post and like it's not like I don't have enough X followers. Which, by the way, go follow me. But I don't have enough X followers or anything where I'm not even getting paid on it or anything. Like there's no incentive for me to spread some misinformation about this. But I'll get people doubting it, and it's unreal to me. But yeah, I'll have days here where I don't do it. Today, I had a doctor's appointment. All right, it's
Yeah.
about 20 miles away. Drove there. I took over right after we got in the parking lot.
Yeah.
As soon as I got out of the parking lot, double click, got all the way here until I need to go inside my gate. That was it. Like to me, it seems like it's still beta, obviously, right? Because a lot of it, I would say, is more like smoothness, like on some like weird quirks, and
Mhm.
every once in a while you do take over, but it seems like it's a lot closer than what people are saying. Like, what's your feel? I mean, you're in Washington, right? I'm in Florida. We see what's going on with Omar in California. I mean, we see people all over. What's your take? Like, what's your ground truth?
Yeah, so obviously it works, like you said, and it's already gone to the point where I've turned it on with my daughter and with my wife, right? So there's years I never bothered, right? But now we're at the point where you can actually say, "Hey, this thing works. Let me show you," and they're very impressed. um, it's clearly not yet ready for prime time for, like you said, everything, but it's this concept of, it recognizes the world and it knows what's happening and it knows how to behave in that, right? The best example is the bicyclist, and it knows how to go around it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, so but for me, it's like 11.4, as we've talked about this already, that version is is not impressive to me as much as version 12.
Well, yeah.
And of course, right? And so really for me, it's like I'm not as interested in 11.4 anymore, right? I'm just really looking forward to 11 to 12, because with version 12, and have you seen yeah, I think you did, right? You watched Ashok Swami's video,
Yeah, of
and
course.
yeah, where they showed that this system 12 can actually teach itself. They didn't have to code anything. It taught itself, that this is fog and I can drive through
Mhm.
fog, that that's paper flying from behind the car, I can drive through that. It's teaching itself everything just by video. And so and then if you saw the kind of the 3D model, the general model that it can map out, it looks like a video, right? It can actually see the curbs, how the height of the curbs. It can see trees and mailboxes, and it can recreate that. And so that is just a leap beyond what we're doing now. And so that's why I've got high hopes that this is really the answer.
Yeah. How often do you use FSD right now?
Not often, actually. So, like, I
Oh,
would
really?
do it heavily for the first several months, and then I don't use it because I still find that it's so I'm okay. I'm very close to using it every time, but I still don't. I use autopilot every time I travel from, Vancouver to Seattle. I use it all the time because I find I'm safer with it and I feel very comfortable with it. Where I'm very close now, where I feel like I'm actually safer with it on than not beta.
Hmm.
Not quite there yet. So this is the idea that if the car is supposed to turn left, so of course, right, you look to the left, then you look to the right, then you look to the left, right? But with 8 cameras in the car, you feel so much safer because as you look to the left and you look to the right, and as it's moving, you know that there's cameras, and if there was a person going to walk, you have that one extra thing that could stop that from happening. I feel so much safer. So I'm almost there. Yeah.
So if you're going to the grocery store, you're not turning FSD beta on.
Not on. No. I've got to be in a mood that I really want to test it out again. But at this point, it's like
Really?
I'm just gonna wait for 12. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting. I use it for everything
Yeah.
at
I
this
know.
point. I don't know if it's just because I'm on 7.3 versus 4.4, but I use it nonstop. I don't drive to the gym. I don't drive to the grocery store at all. It does everything. And it could
Yeah.
also be my geo, maybe my streets, it's a lot different, but it's it's just miraculous. And
Oh,
I
I
don't
should
know.
mention something though. Like what happened to me was my car got into an accident. Not my fault. Not my daughter's fault. That somebody hit the car.
And not
And so
FSD's
then,
fault or
no, not
okay.
not an FSD.
I just gotta
Another
say people will clip this
another
out.
driver. My daughter was about to stop in a four-way stop sign. It's ridiculous. She's already slowing down to 5 on. Another driver came onto her driveway and hit the car.
Oh,
So Tesla service fixed it. For a year and a half since that, the car's been buggy, and then they wouldn't update my FSD, and that's where I just got into the mode of, okay, I'm not gonna, it's like I was always like
oh,
several. I used to be at the, every time a brand new one, I'd get the new one fast, but now it's like I fell off the line, and then I had to bring it in, and then they had to do a new firmware update for me to finally get the latest versions, and so I just completely got out of the whole, testing the new versions kind of thing that I used to do.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was to me the 4 11.4 series was the step change. Like I think I want to say it was like
Yeah.
I forget the numbers, but like 11.3.6 maybe. It it wasn't great. Like it was fine, like it worked, but there's no smoothness to it and it would just jerk out of nowhere. And then with 4.4, I was like, man, this is pretty solid. Like, it's not perfect. And I would do the majority of my drives without interventions, but I would use it everywhere. And then 7.3 or 7.2, it was like, all right, I'm having days now without intervention. Like, this is
Yeah.
wild. I had a streak of 4 days with no interventions, and then on the fifth day, I had an intervention, and it was so upsetting. It was only because there was a car accident that had happened on a
Mm,
bridge,
mm.
and I didn't see beta getting over fast enough. I'm like, I'm just taking over. Like, I don't feel like it's seeing it, and so yeah, it sucked because I was like, oh, how long can we go?
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, I'm pretty bullish on it. I mean, but version 12 is interesting. I mean, Elon said that it's going to drop the beta moniker. Do you really think that they're just going to drop the beta, roll out 12, or do you think I think they're going to stealthily seed it into 11
Yeah,
dot iterations?
exactly.
What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, what I understand is that it's actually in employees' kind of cars at this point, right? So they're first gonna, like you just said, kind of just roll it out slowly, um, and then and then they're actually running it in shadow mode at this point in our cars. So that was the other thing that Ashok said that they would do next is that
Yeah,
they would probably start running it. Yeah.
he said that in the drive, right, with
Mhm.
Elon.
Yeah.
Um, so do you think they're doing that now? You think that's what
Yeah,
they're
that
doing?
was several months ago, and,
Yeah.
they were pretty bullish about it that it might be in customers' hands by the end of this year. That was one statement he made. So,
Yeah, he said that
yeah,
like what in the summer, like April,
summer, June,
whenever that
yeah.
time. Yeah,
So, yeah, and at this point, it's like, if every time they launch a new computer, supercomputer, which they just did a month ago, um, that's very bullish, and it can happen very quickly after they launch the supercomputer to really ingest and really feel
yeah,
comfortable that things are working well.
yeah. Well, and on that front, just I haven't had a lot of time to talk about about the H100 cluster. Just just because this is my space when we talk about that. For people who don't know, the 10,000 node H100 cluster, it's not actually deployed yet.
Yeah.
It's there, they have it. It's not fully online. At this point, it's about 80% online, but
Mhm.
that's what they've been ramping up is to get it online, which is a nightmare for like I think people really underestimate. I mean, to do just 50 nodes
Mm.
and
Yeah.
interconnect them, that's insane, right? That's crazy, crazy networking work. They're doing 10,000. 10,000. This is next level insane to the point where even Nvidia, I know that Nvidia is not doing professional services on this anymore. Tesla's essentially
Yeah.
told them,
Tesla's took
"Go
it over.
away. We don't need." Yeah, Tesla has taken over the professional service for it, and essentially Nvidia is learning right now from
Yeah.
Tesla on how to do this. So I
Yeah.
can't say more than that, but it's
Yeah.
Tesla's definitely doing things at a record backbreaking pace. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think, and they're going to be buying more of these clusters. It's not just going to be one. They're going to keep buying more. So I think that the speed's going to be insane. FSD is going to be just next level. But do do you think that's it? Like, do you think version 12 will be that light switch moment, and now it's like, hey Tesla, where's the app? Let's go ahead and start robotaxing.
I do. Really absolutely do. I have so much confidence because it's not just Elon saying it now. It's like
That's a
4 or
shock.
5 of the AI pilot team is basically repeating that this is no longer they used to with the version 11 and below, every single edge case, they would code it and they would create a neural net. The neural net needs to learn that edge case. Now it's like just this thing is
Mhm.
learning on its own, and they're all now believing and stating that it's now no longer coding constraint, it's now compute constraint. And so as they launch these, they can ingest more video and then they can watch it learn all these edge cases on its own. um, and then as you hear more and more about even other companies like DeepMind, um, Microsoft had their version as well. They wrote papers on this. That it's these things are learning, and so we're really at a step change in AI, and it looks like that Tesla's leading and it's working. So I'm just very confident that it's going to work. If not right away in January, but it's going to be more super compute, and that's where you were just saying that they're going to invest another 20 billion next year. And then at some point, they'll hit that where it will be able to do the vast majority of edge cases.
With the drive that Elon and Ashok did,
Yeah.
was there something in particular that stood out to you that impressed you? Because there was one thing that when I saw it, I was like, oh, it made me think what you're thinking now. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is going to be it.
What
There
was
was
that?
one specific thing. So
Uh-huh.
when when they were getting to a certain destination, I don't know where it wasn't
Yeah.
Zuck's place,
Yeah.
but the car arrived, and instead of just stopping the street, it pulled into the side
Even
like an Uber would.
yes.
And that I was like, "This is it. This
Yes.
is the right path." The fact that even right now with, the heuristics that are in there and the neural nets,
Yes.
it won't do that. It'll just stop in the street. It somehow knew you can't just stop in the street. You need to at least pull out to the side. And when I saw that and understanding
Yeah.
that there's no heuristics in this, I was like, "Okay,
Yeah,
this
it
is a big
wasn't
deal."
coded. They just watched all these videos and they knew that when people arrive to the destination, they need to find a parking spot, and it did it on its own.
Yeah.
And nobody coded it, nobody taught it, nobody said that they need to do that. The car did it on its own because it knew from the best, and that's the difference, right? So Tesla has millions of videos. I think it's 144,000 hours of videos of curated video every day that they're able to curate only feed it the ones that are really really good versus all these other car companies. They have like 1/10 of that or even less, and those ones are not even curated. They're just videos from the web or whatever it is, and that's the difference. I think that with the it's not one thing, it's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
He kept repeating himself, right? It's nothing but net. We didn't teach it anything. We never fed it how to do roundabouts. We never fed it about how to, how fast to start moving once the green light turns on. Nothing. It just knew what to do on its own, and that's the coolest part is everything there as opposed to 11. They had to code some parts of that. This was, very little coding. It was just it learning on its own.
Yeah.
That's the step change.
Yeah, I think the reason that part really was profound to me was because
Yeah.
the whole drive, it was nothing I hadn't seen before.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
I could tell that it was smoother. Like you
Yeah.
could that was a bit noticeable. Like, but I mean, unless you drive FSD like every
Yeah.
day, you probably wouldn't have picked up on that. But I have never seen it do that. And
Yes.
even then, what was even more telling, you could tell Elon and Ashok were surprised. They were like,
That's right.
"Oh, yeah, it's doing it." Well, because it's seen videos of it doing this, and they're, like, trying to explain, like, "This we didn't code this in that moment," and so that's why it was so
Yes,
jarring to me because I know this software, obviously not the version they're on, but I've never seen it. It was just different,
it
and
is really
I
different.
could feel it, and to me, that, like, that made me feel even more confident about having that edge, on intel and understanding of a company. But going back full circle, if I was invested in many companies, I wouldn't have picked up on that subtle nuance. That one
Yeah.
thing is like, oh, this is a big deal.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people did not. A lot of people just watched it and just go, "Yeah, just yeah, great joyride that they had, fine." And,
Yeah.
nothing happened, right? Nobody that they happened to stock afterwards. Yeah.
So obviously we are you and I were part of the mega stream for earnings, and that's been covered at nauseum at this point.
Yeah.
And it's brownfield content to even talk about at this point. But why do you think there wasn't more information on it? Or Elon, I mean, he said said he's making good progress, seems very promising, but w do you think there's a reason why they didn't talk about it more? Do you think they're just keeping it
Well,
close to their chest? Because
yeah.
it seems like they've been doing that as of late. Like, it seems like they're keeping a lot more stuff close to their chest.
Well, I mean, if you listen to the call, and I know we all did, fine tooth comb, they did talk about FSD and robotaxi. They did say that, he repeated everything he's been saying, right? It's going to be 5 times more usage. And then he said that at one point we'll be a hardware company with software margins. It's just the way he delivered it was just something that he just like, and then he said, oh, the bots will eventually be able to do ballet by a year or so, but people just kind of like went over their heads. So he did say that, but yeah, why did he not say, we're very excited about version 12, or we're about to do this? And my only guess would be Same with a bot, and he punted on the bot when somebody said,
Mhm.
"Is the bot going to be in work in your factories?" He said, "We'll." I believe that these things will. There's going to be demos, and I think that the demos will come out, and that's
Yeah.
what's going to be that's what he's waiting for. It's like let that event be the one to tell people instead of me saying it now. That's my only guess. Other than that, he did say stuff. It's just that it just was flat.
Yeah, I guess as far I was just hoping to hear another just update on version 12, something like, yeah, we've got X amount more, data, or we've improved it, or he said he drove all over Austin, but like how long? How long did you drive for?
Mhm.
Like it's in my world, you always want data points in any story
Yeah,
you're telling to be able to really quantify, understand the impact of it. So did you drive for an hour? Was it 30 miles? Was it 50 miles? How often are you seeing intervention? Obviously we're not going to get a lot of that, but I think that would have helped really understand it.
yeah,
But yeah, you are right. Why do you think I know a lot of people are calling this a disaster of a quarter, and I find it comical because
yeah,
it's like every single quarter we hear the same thing, and it's like, all right, well, how many times are we going to do this? And then you're going to tell us, oh, Elon's ruining another earnings call. Like, how many times are we going to do this before? Like, yeah, it's expected. All right, whatever it is, Elon's going to do, you're not going to like. Okay, but he did on a more apathetic viewpoint. He did seem sad.
yeah.
Do you think it was something personal, or do you think? I mean, what do you think was
Some of
happening
us
there?
were speculating just for fun that Diablo game launched the night before, and so he was probably playing that game. Uh, I don't know, but I mean, I think the big news that came out of this earnings call that was the most kind of sombering is when they said that we're not going to do pedal to the metal. We're going to pull back in our investment in Giga Mexico until we feel comfortable that the macro is going to turn. And so that sort of pulled everybody going, oh, okay, everything's gonna, as a car company, production levels may not hit 2024. But if you dig deeper again, they were already working on the production line for Gen 2 at Giga Texas. They talked about how they're going to expand Giga Texas, and they could easily expand that when they wanted to. So, and then they showed the slide where the production capacity are for all of the existing factories. They seem to be fine. So, I'm not sure why everybody was so down in 2024, thinking that they won't even hit the 2.3 target, but they think they still will. So, I think it's just the delivery was poor, and then I think when he said Cybertruck is we're digging our own grave, some people misinterpret that to think that that means Cybertruck is not going to launch or it's going to be delayed. And he just, when he said it's 18 months, well, 18 months is not,
No, yeah.
by 18 months, we're going to be cash flow positive on this line. That's not a disaster at all. It's just his, because of his frame of mind, which is I am deep dive on a production hell right now, which any company who's launching a new car would be in production hell, just like they were in Model 3 and Model Y. It was exactly the same thing. He's just deep diving now. So he's expressing that. So
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes when we're on those mega streams, people think I'm irrationally always just bullish on everything Tesla and Elon, but I think sometimes I just hear the calls differently than what other people do. Like I
right.
think sometimes people, I don't want to say I'm less emotional because that makes me sound like a psychopath, but what I heard was, yeah, we're going to hit our 1.8 million for this year. What I
Yes.
heard was, yes, Cybertruck's getting launched. What I heard was, we're finally getting this H100 cluster up at record speed.
Yeah.
What I heard, what the comment about we're bearing our own grave, the way I
Mhm.
heard that was, this is such a badass vehicle. We're doing so much new, so much cool with this that, yeah, we probably should stop because we're bearing our own grave because it's going to be
Yeah.
really hard, but it's
It's
going to
going
be
to be
so
amazing.
freaking
Yeah.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's what I heard. But people like hear it a whole different way. And I'm like, I just get so confused. I'm like,
Yeah.
we've heard Joe Rogan talk about it. We've heard Ellison say it at Oracle that he said I can't even talk about some of the stuff. We've heard
Yeah.
Elon say like guys, clearly they're digging in on the graves by making this such a badass vehicle. How do you
But
interpret that any other way?
except that the people who are looking at it for the next 3 to 6 months, right? And they go, oh
Yeah.
crap. That means that I'm not going to see it
But
in 6 months that
but
we
even
thought it was
then,
going to be. Even
Even
then,
then,
right? It's like
November
exactly my
30th
point.
in
Yeah,
18 months for a full ramp up?
yeah, like
What?
perfect. It's great.
Yeah, like
It's
if you would have
amazing.
told us that about Texas, Giga Texas for the Model Y, 250,000, 18 months, we'd be like, all right.
Exactly.
Right? We think, but I don't know. It's weird how people interpret these calls, and it's like if it's not what they want to hear, it's a
Yeah,
bad quarter or it's a bad earnings
yeah,
call. I don't know. Well, so you're right. He was very somber about not going pedal to the metal, and he was trying to, I think, level set about where the economy is, and I think
yeah,
that also rubbed people the wrong way. W- Herbert, in Herbert's life, w- what are your thoughts on right now with the macro? Like, what do you see? Like, I know what I see in my
yeah,
micro. You see
yeah.
things in your own micro, but like, what do you think's going on?
All right. So, this is not my first rodeo. I've lived a long period. I've lived through the depressions of the 70s, the crashes of the 80s, the crashes of I've been through it all, right?
So you're a
If you
great
look
resource
back,
for us to learn from.
no, I mean, I'm just saying I'm
No,
old.
yeah, no, it's
But
great.
yeah, I mean, so what I see, and if you look historically, stock market goes up. Now, whenever there's the recession or depression, it falls, but it'll fall for 2 years. Maybe the worst is a 10-year depression scenario, but over time, it goes up. So whenever something like this happens, I'm like, okay, it's going to be, I just have to be patient. It's going to be 2 more years longer. That's fine. But then it'll catch up, right? It'll catch up to where it's supposed to be and then even skyrocket past. Then I look at the world today and it's like the greatest time to live in the world, right? Because you see the AI boom. This is, so we talked a little bit earlier about the dot com boom. The dot com boom in 2000s was based on the internet being discovered as being something that's revolutionary. But many of those companies were just shells. They were crap. They were stupid business models. And that was fake. This AI boom is not fake. This AI boom is actually already making every individual here more productive. The chat GPT that people are using daily now is making people more productive. And so we will, and we are seeing that in not only one or two handful of companies right now showing up in the Magnificent Seven, but all the other companies, they will start to see productivity gains because this AI boom is real. And so to me, it's like, okay, we've got 3 wars, 2 wars and a half. What's going to happen there? That's always a scary thing. And that's, you can never get past that. And so I'm just always positive that, and so there were people that was already calling 6 months ago, a year ago, they were already calling for a dramatic, massive recession that we were supposed to hit. They were calling for the world to end, the economic world. I certainly felt that in 2008 and 2018
Mhm.
again. And so certainly that could happen. Financial meltdown in 2008 was none other. This is like banks and investment firms, and that almost happened to us last year, right? With the banks could have
Yeah.
just gone out of control. So, but it didn't happen. And so it's like I'm always just a little bit more positive thinking than negative. It can go either way. But of course, people say, oh, you've got to be concerned about the negative because you have to prepare for it. Okay, yeah, you have to prepare for it. But I just still think that it doesn't have to be negative. So it's the only way I survive is to have hope
Mhm.
that it's going to be fine. Now you have Elon saying this, and so you have to take his word seriously. He knows what's going on more than others. He's called it several times already, so I'm not going to, discounting him. So I'm very happy that he's protecting himself, protecting our investments. It's another thing that's missed, right? Would
Yep.
you rather a company build Giga Mexico, announce another factory, invest money into those factories, get hit with a massive recession, all of a sudden lose our cash, and then they're struggling? And would you rather that? Or somebody says, okay, I'm going to slow down my Mexico, but I'm going to continue investing in AI. And so for me, it's like bot, AI, and autonomy are still massive investments. In the meantime, they've added $3 billion to their cash just in case, and they're going to slow down Mexico. So for the people who think that this is a car company, they're very sad. They're like, oh shit, we're in trouble. But the people like you and me who go, oh, car company business may be flat and maybe actually slow down, maybe. But the other business is like full on investments. You just talked about more computers being built. This is going to deliver outsized gains in the car company. So for me, it's like I wasn't phased at all. I think the stock will take a hit and it could fall dramatically because the problem is that there's no floor anymore. And I do agree that normally investors need something to hang their head on and go, this company's good. But right now, all the short term catalysts have been removed. And then Elon did not give confidence for us, people who need to hear the positives about the long term bets.
So, so why do you think everybody believes the negative stuff Elon says, but not the positive stuff? Well, like,
Exactly.
isn't that
It's
weird?
unfair because of his what he said about FSD that basically ruined his his
Credibility.
credibility. I guess it certainly did. He's known, and then you can see in the book and the biography that he's known to kind of set these kind of statements, even though it may not be held off to anything, and he's just doing it to try to get the team to be motivated to try to hit that target. But the truth is, who he has called everything, and everything he has said has turned true. People hate it when I say that.
But it's true.
But it's true. It's been delayed massively. So they go, the FSD. Yeah, you're right. He's been calling since 2015. But we're today, if you ask anybody today, what it used to be like 99% of people said, FSD, robotaxi will never happen in my lifetime. 99% of people said that 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now, people 50% will say that. And then in a year, it'll be like 10% say that that's the case because Elon called it and it's happening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, the funny thing is that I actually think he'll, how in the book they talk about the debate between the executives who calmed them down and said, hey, we should not go all in on a robotaxi vehicle. We need
Yeah.
to have a plan B just in case. Let's create a Model 3 that's drivable. He might actually turn out to be right now. It might turn out that by the time they build the car that's going to be for the mass market, at that point, robotaxi might already be available. And they're like, why are we spending time on that? We wasted time on that instead of full on. You know what I mean? I bet he'll be proven correct in that bet.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be hilarious. I mean, I think we're already seeing that he's proven correct with LiDAR.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see that. But a lot of these companies still need LiDAR because if they don't have the data or the fleet out there, they need some crutches. And that's what it is. So I'm kind of in the same sentiment as you. And again, maybe this makes me an Elon apologist, but I saw that call and the taking, your foot off the accelerator a little bit as a prudent decision for a company during unwavering
Yeah.
times. I
Yeah.
mean, it's it, I think too many people look at Tesla in a vacuum, and then and all of a sudden it's not a car company to everybody, right? Yeah, if you look at Ford, GM, Volkswagen, etc., they're struggling. You see dealerships piling up, EV projects are getting paused. It seems very prudent to take a step back, right? Let's see what's happening. Look at the 10-year note right now, right? Skyrocketing. It means car loans are going up. So, are we in a recession? Are we going to have a recession? What do you see in your day to day life? I mean, I know you don't know. No one knows, right? What is a recession even anymore at this point? It's
Yeah.
been changed. So, what are you thinking is going to happen over the next
Yeah.
12 to 18 months from a economy standpoint? Because we also have a lot of debt and we have divided government and these wars. I mean, what's your mental model? I mean, yes, everything's going to go up into the right over the long term, but over the shorter term, 12 to 18 months, and not even investment, just in general, like what's your take on what's going to happen?
I mean, obviously, at any moment, any of these things can be enough to just tip everything, like the credit card debt that's rising, the interest rates that are just to the point where the 10 years is so much higher. All that is just so close that people can't afford. And then their monthlies have just gone to the point where, again, you have to, where you and I live is very different than where a big part of America lives in, where they're living paycheck to paycheck, right? And so it could be at any moment it could crash. Um, we're very, very risky at this moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, but it's just that, shockingly, right, in the last year, we've continued on. The economy is still growing. Inflation is being tamed. And nobody knew that we were going to get to the soft landing, and it feels like we're probably there right now. but any little thing could actually just break this immediately, and we'll see a precipitous drop or something happening. So yeah, so at this point, it's like we're doing good considering that there's a couple wars, considering that we just had massive inflation the last couple of years, and then we raise the interest rates, and then we're basically the debt is growing like crazy, right? So at some point, it's going to break,
Yeah.
and so it can happen.
Yeah, I don't really like to look backwards for a lot of signal, but it was the same thing that happened in '06 and '07 was the same thing. All of a sudden, like the economy was booming until it wasn't, right? We had a similar thing. But I want to share something real quick on my screen. Hopefully you can see this. So Gary Black,
Yeah, I
I'm
saw
not
this.
picking
Yeah,
on Gary. So you guys can read this. He's essentially trying to make this argument that, you know, the price cuts aren't really working and people people have, the vehicle prices are cheaper now, so people should be wanting to come out in droves to purchase Teslas, but they're not despite, you know, the way he says is like, this big pullback, $900 a month. To me, this misses the entire point about what's going on and what Elon was trying to say, right? This goes back to that whole vacuum perspective and saying that a $900 payment is not saying that it's $1,000 payment today versus 15 months ago is not the same, right? Because 15 months ago, grocery prices were less. 15 months ago, your electricity bill was less. 15 months ago, your rent was less, right? Everything was less. And so for you to be able to eat a bigger car payment wasn't that much of a stretch. But when everything in your life creeps up in cost, all it takes is an extra $50 here, an extra $10 there, another 20 over there. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter really how much the monthly has changed for Tesla. If it's $100, $200, we've eroded so much purchasing power by the consumers that they can't afford this. And I think that's what Elon's point was, is that people are hurting out there and that if we want them to purchase these vehicles, well, too much of it is going to interest. And so we have to lower the price of the car or people just can't afford it. It's not that they don't want it, it's that they can't afford it because everything in their life has gone up. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because I feel like
yeah.
Gary's really missing the forest for the trees.
Okay. Let's take a look what he said here. This is what I interpreted. I may be wrong, but this is I think he's absolutely completely wrong. Okay. He goes, look, 15 months ago, the Model Y was $65,000. And so the monthly payment based on the interest rate at that time is $1,000. Okay. Today, the Model Y is $50,000 and the monthly pay is $904. Thank you, Gary. That's exactly what Elon said. We need to keep the monthly payment the same. Well, Gary, why don't you take the $65,000, apply it to today's interest rates, and tell me what the monthly payment is? Because if Gary had his way, January of this year, and they did the 20% price cuts, he was complaining we should be advertising like crazy. Why are we doing price cuts? We should be advertising. Well, if he had his way, if Gary was running Tesla today, our price of the Model Y would still be 65,000, not 50,000. So tell me at 65,000 with this current 7.5% auto loan rate, tell me what the new monthly payment. The fact that it's very close or maybe under what it was 15 months ago, that's precisely why they did this. They needed to keep the monthly rate the same. So I'm just confused. Dude,
Yeah.
tell me why you're showing me is that you needed to do the price cut to keep the monthly cost the same. So
A a hu a hundred one hundred 1,000% agreed. Um, what I will say though is, in a way, and it was funny because Omar put a tweet today saying, you say you need to advertise. Elon says we're advertising. And then you say you need to advertise. Elon said we are advertising. It's like this back and forth. Like, and then Gary's response was, "You'll know when they're advertising." It's like we know they're advertising. We saw in the airport. We've seen the Google ads and all that. It's just they're not doing it the way you want to do it, apparently. But I had an experience today which was very interesting. I was I was at my gym today. I go to a CrossFit gym, so it's very much
Yeah.
people talk and hang out. It's not everybody's just in their own world. And this guy that owns a construction company was there, and he knows that I like Tesla. Everybody knows I like Tesla. And he was asking me like, "Hey, like, how do you like your Tesla?" And we were talking about it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about, or I need to get a new car because my truck is about to die."
Mhm.
And my father said to me, "Hey, why don't you get a Tesla?" And his response to his father was, "Oh, well, they're so expensive. I can't afford that."
Yep.
And his dad said, "No, they've come down in price." So he looked it up and he
Mhm.
said, "Oh man, I didn't realize this."
Mhm.
Well, today he went, bought one, I
You
gave him
use
my
your referral.
referral code.
Nice.
Yeah. And so yeah, he bought a Model Y today. So he got $250 off of it. He got 3 months free of FSD. So about $1,000 of discounts there. So I do think that there is something to be said for
Of course.
letting the people know that the
Of
prices have
course.
dropped. But
Yeah.
but even if there was advertising, had it not been for those price cuts,
Yes.
he probably wouldn't be buying a
I
Tesla.
keep telling Gary, if you had your way, you would have been advertising in January of 2022 and you would have kept the price the same. And today you'd be going advertising like crazy and trying to sell a 65,000. It's like, no, dude, wait until you can get the price cut. The price cuts need to bring it to parity with gas cars, which we're almost there. In some ways, to evaluate it, we've hit that mark already. In some ways, some stats that I've been seeing showing that it might take another year before we get there. But once you hit price parity, and you heard Elon say, once we get to the cost of a RAV4, when that happens, you go crazy with your advertisement. And right now, yes, you can. I'm not against advertisement today, and I've been saying you should advertise today, but I was against it in January. And if you listen to these people who are pro advertisement, they were saying this a year ago in January. It's like, good luck. Good luck advertising like crazy when you're trying to sell everybody should be buying a Lamborghini today at 100 grand. Advertise like crazy and see how many people will buy that for you. It's like
Yeah.
only a small percent of people can afford it.
Yeah. No, and I think uh, it's listen, he's playing chess. Elon, or he's playing Go, actually, right? We're sitting here, we're trying to, bring our piece in the back out front, and Elon's he's playing Go. He's just doing something else, right? He's just we saw in the book he loves his strategy games. That's what he's doing here, because the fact that they started doing price cuts, which put pressure on all these
Exactly.
OEMs.
Now they
And
can't.
now look what's happening now. Like,
Yeah.
look what it is. Like, people thought it was a price war.
Yeah.
And honestly, Tesla had this beautiful veil to say, well, one, no, we're doing it for the consumers. And two, we're looking for clearing price. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't want to build up inventory. We're going to drop it until we get it out. And now their moat's growing.
Yeah.
It's they're getting more dominant. UAW strike is making everybody put on pause. VW saying that they have no demand, right? We're seeing all these things happening, and it's just going to entrench Tesla more.
Yeah.
Now, I have I've said that Tesla doesn't need to advertise. I've been very adamant about this. I don't think Tesla needs to advertise at all. The reason I think that is because Tesla has told me that they don't want to advertise yet because they don't think they need to. My issue with everybody saying advertising is that everyone's trying to make an assumption, a, some decision when they don't have the data. Tesla has the data; they have all the
Exactly.
information, and so to come out and be so emphatic about what they should do when you don't have the data is insane to me. So to
I
me,
know.
it's like if they tell me we don't need to advertise yet except for an airport in Japan and some Google ads, all right, I trust you guys. Like
Exactly.
why
It's
would I
like
think
it's funny
anything
that
else?
people think, okay, so first of all, Gary and others are saying that, hey, management can make mistakes, and they think that
Sure.
Elon is dogmatic about not advertising. But like you just said, it's not like the executive team at Tesla had not done the simple math that you are doing, saying you are losing $2 billion for every $2,000. Do I not realize that? Why not spend $100 million on advertising? So do you not think that Tesla had done that simple math and you're saying that they had no idea this is the case? There's a strategy, and the strategy is to get to price parity, then advertise like crazy when that happens. And then, like you just said, you cannot underestimate what you just said. That is so critical. If they kept the price high, or let me put it this way, because they did the price cuts, every car company, including many Chinese car companies, had to price war and lower the prices. This made them not have as much margin and also not be able to raise money to invest in there. Meanwhile, Tesla is doing very well with their margins and have cash on hand, and they're investing like crazy. And so what happens is, yeah, you hit them hard at this moment when they were just growing. They're all startups. You saw that list of all the companies that are doing EVs and how much money they're losing. The lowest one was $33,000 per car. Everybody else is losing even more than that per car. So when you do this, it just causes them. So what's the world is going to be our oyster in a year or two when everything turns around. They're still going to be much further behind at this point. So, like you're saying, it's like it's an amazing strategy, but yet the short-term investors want to see margins this year, margins next year, so that I can see my stock go up. But it's going to be 5x stock gain, not a 1x stock. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I'm in the ball camp where I would rather think about the long term, take market share,
yeah,
sacrifice profits for today for bigger profits tomorrow, right? That's what
yeah,
all the greatest companies have always done, always. And what I see right now are a couple of things. One, again, we all know what's happened with Ford. We all know what's happened to GM, Stellantis, Volkswagen, pretty much any auto company in the West, we see what's happening. And frankly, even in China, outside of BYD, and BYD needs to sell 5x more vehicles to even be making the same amount of cash flow that Tesla's making. So really, everybody is dealing with this. And what I see happening that's inevitable, in my opinion, is that a lot of these OEMs are probably going to go bankrupt.
mhm,
I think it's going to happen. It's
yeah,
sad that's going to happen just because, these are iconic companies, but
mhm,
that's also part of life. You need companies to die so others can grow, right? Sears had to die for Amazon to come up, right? Nokia had to die, or well, Nokia is still alive, I guess. But you get my point, right? But here's my point. Even if Tesla keeps dropping prices, these companies aren't profitable in their EVs. They're slowing them down, if not pausing them. Do you think that EV adoption is going to slow down? I don't. We're on a upward trend with
yeah.
adoption. So if that trend continues, and Tesla's the only one really making vehicles at volume, that just means they get more and more. So it doesn't matter if the margins are slightly lower because your volume's going to be bigger because no
Yeah.
one else can compete. It seems so logical to me, but why do you think everyone misses that?
Yeah, I get they look at it as a traditional car company. They look at it as an investment, as in a stock that they want to make money on. Gary and others are institutional investors. They have a scorecard of how well their investment is doing quarter by quarter. As much as they say that I'm a long-term investor, they're not. Whereas you and I don't have a scorecard. We don't mind if the next 2 quarters we actually lose money. I mean, I'm saying that that's why
Well,
we don't
yeah.
need that stock for the next year or two. The people who do, it's a big issue and it's a concern. But the people who don't, they realize this is the right strategy. It's out of the bag at this point, right? That we've hit the 10%, trajectory for an exponential curve. We know all the benefits of an electric vehicle. There's not just one, there's not two, there's not 10, there's like 20 benefits of why an EV is better. And it's proven already, and it's going to cost less. So at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter at this point. It's the price is the number one thing, right? So once you've hit the price parity, now you're going to be cheaper. Doesn't matter of all the other benefits. What matters is which is the cheapest car that can get me there. I'll buy that one. So yeah, these car companies, they're dead. They are dead. It's over. And there's this thing where whenever you just go look back and look at every single revolution, right? A legacy technology being usurped by new technology. And what you'll see is that once the new technology hits 5%, the old technology continues to grow. If you look at Blockbuster versus Netflix, now this is a much more complicated. I can tell you the whole story, but this is a simplistic way, which is the people who know the real story. There's a lot more to this, but The general story is this: you will watch Blockbuster continuing to grow with profits increasing, revenue and profits growing after Netflix hit 5%, grew, and then crashed. Once Netflix hit 15%, it was over. The DVD by mail took over. People no longer wanted to go to the store and bring back the thing. Now it's a very complicated story, that one, but that pattern is very, very similar to every other technology. Um, it's like you'll watch the previous technology still growing, even the entrance of a new tech, then it dies. And this is where we are with EVs. At one point, and very likely, I'd say in 2 years, this is not a slow thing. As EVs hit a certain hit, and that everybody's already understanding, nobody's going to buy a gas car anymore. Even my sister, who is a Mercedes brand loyalist, she only buys Mercedes. Sharon and her family, they go to Germany to go to the factory, get a Mercedes, and have it shipped back so that she can save on taxes and all that. But they love Mercedes, and they know now that they cannot buy a gas car. So even they know they need to do this. I'm just saying that I think the general public knows that electric vehicles is the way to go, and then it's at some point the number of people that want to buy the gas car will fall dramatically. So it's going to be a cliff.
Do you think when that cliff comes, do you think, at least here in the States, do you think there will be government bailouts again?
Well, it's already happening. So I don't know. We've reported this already that Ford got a $9 billion loan. 15 billion was just a new 15 billion was just announced, of which 2 billion was it wasn't even a loan, it was a grant. And this loan is low margin, and it was low interest rates, and it was very much given to, it's stated out there, basically union workers was what it was them. So it's already happening. There was already bailouts of this, free money being given to these firms. That 15 billion could already be used to cover some of the union demands for for wage increases. So there was several of these. Those were just two that I mentioned, but there's already been several. So more and more of that will come. The good news is that Tesla has the IRA and they get some of that too. But no, this money's being given to these guys.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, there's definitely like subsidies and in investment loans and things of that nature. But I do not think we'll see like another GM style bailout.
Right.
I think our country has moved on from those days where we no longer want these forever wars, right? It's right now our society's just, we don't want to be in a war again. We don't like it. We want to support people, but what's the plan? We don't want to bail out big companies anymore. Like it's the appetite for that, I don't think exists anymore the way it did back then. And I think that's great for the United States in general, because we can't keep bailing out companies that can't innovate, right? We are the country of innovation. So I think that's important to hold on to that. But with the UAW, I don't know if this is novel. I haven't really heard anyone else talk about this, but I think that what's happening right now is an attempt to kill EV production for GM, for Stellantis by the UAW. I think they're trying to thwart their efforts in the EV segment. What do you think about that? Because at this point, it seems like they're caught between a rock and a hard place, and the UAW must see that. And it's like, I get it. You want to get your fair share, whatever that phrase even means these days, but at what risk? Would you rather have something or zero? And it's like they don't. Maybe they just don't. Maybe they genuinely don't understand what's happening, and they don't see it. And we're like, the allegory in the cave. We've seen the light, so we see it, but they're still in the cave, so they don't see the bigger picture. I mean, do you think there's any rationale behind that?
There could be. I mean, I think what we need to find out is, like, we know that an electric vehicle has so much less, like hundreds and hundreds of parts less than an ICE car. If you have that much less ICE parts, you don't need as many workers to install these things. And so that could be the case, right? They know that if they move to the EVs, there's going to be less needed for as many workers as they've got, or at least those guys would need to be retrained and all that stuff, which is unlikely. So that could be the case. They just want to keep the gas cars a little bit longer and hoping that they can delay everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So just two more things. I know we're about an hour and a half here. So I appreciate you hanging out with me here,
Yeah.
especially on a
That's fun.
Friday. We'll probably post this probably sometime tomorrow or Sunday. Um, so long-term investing and thinking when it comes to Tesla, where, where do you, everyone uses 2030 as kind of a measuring stick.
Yeah.
You know, Kathy Woods thinks we can get to either 2000 base, 2400 bull by 2027, using her Monte Carlo approach. Um, you know, Ron Barron says, 1500 by 2030. I believe that's only with auto and energy assumptions. Where's Herbert at? What's Herbert think is possible? Not financial advice, but just for
Yeah.
fun. Like, what does Herbert think is possible?
Okay. So for me, so of course, as we know, my measuring stick is, can it just double? And if it doubles, hey, this is a very good investment. And then you're going, okay, just the car company alone, if none of the other businesses work, when will this double? The stock double at this point, right? So you calculate it out, and you can kind of look at 2025, 2026, um, you know, and it still is on track for all that, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this is where it matters with how many cars can they make, capacity, the 2.3 million, and then when can it get to the 4? And that's why initially it was like, we need to have more factories to be able to hit that. But people keep forgetting that they're now doing the unboxed model, which they've already started working on in Giga Texas for the Model 3 line, the Model 2 compact car, which was in May. So they're already starting to work on this new unboxed model, and that they don't require more factories. They can just double their output. So at this point, I'm still pretty confident that at the minimum we're going to double our investment by 2025. Then you look at the other potentials, right?
But
And
real quick, so you say double our investment off of what basis? Because a few days ago we were at 270. Now we're at
right.
I don't know, just over 200.
So okay, so you're correct in that that was a amateurish kind of thinking, because we are back to becoming a story stock, especially after where we're at today. The earnings are going to be flat for next year, and so at this point, the only way to get the stock to jump up in the next year is going to be these stories, which is bots, energy, autonomy, AI. If those don't happen, then everybody knows that their forecast is just the car company is going to be kind of a flat thing. The other thing that could happen, of course, is as people start realizing that, like you just said, once they realize that Ford and GM and others are dead, that is people, despite the flat earnings, people start investing. I'm about to interview Nicholas Colas. Nick Colas is 30 years investment management, and he is a researcher, and he researched auto industry. He actually advised in the Chrysler GM merger. Anyways, he showed this one graph. Everybody showed it to him. It's a very famous graph that says on one side is Tesla at $1 trillion. This was a year ago. Then you got 12 auto companies all adding up not to the same trillion market cap. And he said simply, dead, alive. So the reason why those market caps of Ford and GM is less than Tesla is because they know that as an investor, your future out that they're going to be dead. Toyota is still maintaining its high market cap, because people believe that they will be one of the winners. Okay. So once a couple of car companies die, despite your margin being flat for the auto business, the stock will still go up. Okay. So that's step one. Now you go, okay, energy's on track. And if you look at what happened this time, we're now at 6% of the profit is energy, which is significant. And it can double. It's got the highest margin, all that. So even just energy alone, at some point, Elon believes will be as much as the car company where we're at today. Energy will get there in 3 to 5 years. And so that should double the stock, just energy alone, by 2025. So I am actually, I'm actually not a to 2030 person. I think people just say by 2030 I'll be fine. I have been saying all along that bots going to come faster than autonomy, and that autonomy was going to happen. Like people like you and I have been saying autonomy is going to happen, and then there's people who say it's not in my lifetime. Then people say not until 10 years, and then there's people like 5 years. And I'm the person who says it's not going to happen in 2 or 3 years, but it'll happen in 5 years. And I am proven right because as the years go on, you get closer and closer for everybody to start realizing it's inevitable. And so we just need to get to the moment when it's inevitable, when people realize it's inevitable. And that's where a demo of a version 12 and explaining that it learned everything on its own, when that hits people's minds, just like the chat GPT moment, when something like that happens, then the investment will pile in despite that the earnings are not there, despite it's not there, that inevitable moment. And so one of these, and I think it's the bot. So for me, I don't think I need to wait till 2030 for the bot because that's easier for people to realize it's inevitable that Tesla is going to make $1 trillion of money. They just need to show 1,000 of these bots working in their own factories, doing a simple pick and place thing, and being able to do dexterity for investors to realize this thing can do a million kind of jobs as soon as they scale it. They don't have to wait for it to be actually sold to show revenue. I think that that's going to be the moment. So I think that things can happen very quickly. For me by 2023. So by 2026, 27. But yeah, 2027, 2030 for sure. But this is like, might happen sooner.
So by 2030, like where do you think
Yeah,
stock
so
price could be?
5x of a stock. Oh, 2030. I'm at that point. I think it's a 10x. But I think and again, depending on what number you're choosing, but if you're doing 250, we're going to get
Yeah,
back.
just do 250.
Yeah. If we're at 250 today, then it'll be, yeah. I don't know. I don't really calculate the details because there's so many moving parts, but
Yeah.
just in general, I do think that it's going to be a 5x, by 2025, 26, like that, and that 10x by 2030. By 2030, which is 7 years from now, do you know how far we're going to be with the bots and the supercomputers and the energy supercharger business
FSD.
alone?
FSD
FSD.
just turned 3.
Yeah.
That's 7 years.
Yeah. So I just did I did an interview with Brian Wang, and he calculated out FSD. And he said, if we don't ever get robotaxi, and you never do robotaxi at all, but you just sell FSD to the buyers of the car, but the FSD is improved to the point that we talked earlier, that it's so much safer and you feel much more comfortable driving it, then the take rate might go up. And he just calculated that if it goes up, now he's a little too far ahead, which is I think 50% take rate. We're at 10% right now in the US. But if it goes up to even 20, 30%, we are now rivaling what Amazon is getting from AWS. And AWS made Amazon stock go up by 4 times. Mm-hmm. And he said that the profit margin is 4 times more than Amazon's AWS. So it's going to be the same amount of $80 billion of, that's 50%. So maybe cut it in half. Anyways, just FSD, no robotaxi alone, software services could be sold to more people from the 10% and up, and then double, triple that. And that's going to be contributor to the doubling of the stock at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I think FSD is going to definitely jump in, at least in North America, in adoption. I think once, and it's probably going to be version 12, once it's out, I think Tesla will say, okay, we will take liability on this, but you have to use Tesla insurance for us to take liability. Yeah. And that's an interesting moment because at that point, they can, based on you using FSD, lower your insurance price. And if you don't buy FSD outright, all of a sudden, FSD subscription plus your insurance can be less than what you're paying for insurance now.
Yes.
Right? Think about that. Like it's the ultimate Trojan horse.
It is. Yeah.
Like it's
just an insurance thing that they're going to make more revenue on insurance. By the way, I also have this theory that they might say to you, I'm willing to take liability for this route, for these routes. So in this geography, we'll take liability. But if you go outside of that, we won't do it. So like if you drive to work and back and you do that 20, 30 times in a month, then it might say, okay, from now on, I got this. You can go to work and back because I've driven this route. I know exactly what to do. I'll take the liability for that. Go to sleep. We'll take liability for that. That might be, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's legal or not, but there might be something like that where they go, just geography will do it, but I can't guarantee for everything else.
Yeah. Man, I could probably talk to you for like another 3
Yeah,
hours,
me too.
Herbert. Listen, I appreciate this. I want to be respectful of your time. I understand
Thanks.
it's a
Yeah.
Friday as well. Thank you for joining me on here. Please don't get burnt out because I love watching your stuff. I listen to you when I'm working out, when I go on runs and stuff, I'm driving or when FSD is driving me, right? I'm always got it on Bluetooth. So please don't get burnt out. Keep it up. I absolutely love it. The community loves it. You're a special person in this community. Um,
Wow.
I'm awful at all this, so I didn't plug you earlier. I'll do an intro that will plug all your stuff. But um, everyone, you can follow Herbert on X at Herbert Ong,
Yeah.
and then your channel is also called, is it Tesla Herbert or is
Brighter.
it
Brighter.
Brighter? That's right. I knew that. Bright. I can see it in your background. Brighter with Herbert. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We could have talked about so many other things. The Cybertruck getting shot today with a gun and all that stuff. I mean, there's so much to go over, but it was great to hear a little bit more about your background and then just how you're thinking about things, just in a little bit more long form, and just hearing you speak yourself. So again, I'm being long-winded now. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.